Hello and welcome back to the Tea and a Buddy podcast. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Erica.
And today's episode we're going to be talking about The Last Kingdom, 7 Kings Must Die. And forgive me, I sound a little bit snotty. I've still not gotten over this cold. It's, I sound a little bit like stuffed up.
You got the sexy phlegm.
No, I haven't. It's not sexy at all. It's more like Jax Taylor.
No,
I sound more like Jax Taylor.
Oh, God.
Because he's always sounded like he's got a cold.
No, you'd have to be kind of talking like...
Yeah, something like that anyway.
Oh, my gosh.
It's another Vanderpump Rules reference for you all because she's been watching it since the beginning on Peacock. She's been doing her rewatches.
Yes.
So yeah, but it's not about that today. It's about
It's not about the pasta. I thought you were.
It's not about the pasta, and it's not about the Vanderpump Rules today.
Oh my God, we have to stop. Okay.
It's about The Last Kingdom, and then the final movie which wraps up the whole thing. 7 Kings Must Die. So what did you think of it?
Well, first of all, we put out on our Instagram that we were going to watch it.
Yeah.
And there wasn't much interest amongst our followers.
Not too much. No, a couple of people who we knew were fans.
Yeah, so hopefully you guys listening are a little bit more interested. We love the series.
The series was great, yeah.
The series was like... If you've never seen it, and you're a Game of Thrones fan, like, definitely go watch The Last Kingdom. Because basically, it's just like Game of Thrones, only... more based in reality. Well,
it's largely a true story. The Last Kingdom, it's based on Bernard Cornwell's...
It's like historical fiction.
It's historical fiction, yeah. Whereas Game of Thrones is just pure fantasy.
Yeah,
mm-hmm. It's not
what?
Even
There
set.
weren't White Walkers back then.
No White Walkers, or there wasn't any Jon Snow or the Wall or anything like that.
Yeah.
For anyone who's not really familiar, The Last Kingdom is based on Bernard Cornwell's The Saxon Chronicles, which was like a series of books he developed.
Why haven't we read those? I feel like we would find those so interesting.
And his protagonist in it, protagonist, is it? Protagonist. His dragonist in it is Uhtred, son of Uhtred, who is an orphan who's raised by Danes. Mm-hmm. And
can we call him an English? No, I guess what were they, Saxon?
Saxons, yeah.
A Saxon
they were Saxon.
Orphan, yeah.
He was a Saxon orphan, yeah, because England didn't exist yet.
Yeah, it all took place before England was England.
Yeah, because, I mean, the islands were still called Britain, I guess. And there was Ireland as well.
They were called Britain?
Yeah, I think they were called Britain by the Romans. Because this was all post-Roman era,
Yeah.
But, the Danes and the Saxons, the Vikings invaded, and the Danes did too.
Yeah.
And, they pretty much carved up most of England. Mm-hmm. Except for, like, the people who still lived there, like Saxons and stuff, who were, like, descended from Romans, I'm presuming.
Yeah.
So they had the big chunk of Wessex, which was, like, Alfred, who was considered the king of Wessex. Mm-hmm. And so, you had all that. That was the big story. That's largely true, except there was really no kind of, like, Uhtred. There was Uhtred the Bold, but it wasn't like it was in the show. Uhtred wasn't going around fighting all these battles and, for Alfred and...
winning the battles for everyone.
And it was based on Bernard Cornwell's own family experience. He did his family tree, and he discovered his family went back to the 6th century.
Oh, yeah?
And they had the castle of Babenberg at one point, but were, like, betrayed, and they had to flee to Yorkshire.
Oh, really?
So he found all this, and so he was like, and his father was called Outhred or Outhred or something, so he made it like Uhtred.
Yeah.
And he made this protagonist, and it was like, Babenberg's his which is latter-day Bamberg Castle in Northumbria. Yeah, it's Northumbria, isn't it? Yeah. Uh-huh. Because I'm trying to remember where all this takes place, and it's, it's just like, so he's trying to get his castle back because people trying to get it from him. You know,
I love that. I mean, ever since I researched my DNA, I always thought it would be so, like, I don't know. I would love to write a story that was based on my own family history at some point, you know, some character in my family history.
Well, I mean, you could easily do it, and I mean, I don't know, it's
if you were a writer,
it was
why
a big,
wouldn't you?
It was adapted. People were like, oh, it was because of Game of Thrones, this was adapted into a series, and Bernard Cornwell was like, no, because the only similarities are the fighting scenes. You know, Game of Thrones is pure fantasy. This is
the similarities are the kingdom, all the different kingdoms.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, to me, that's where the similarities lie with Game of Thrones. You know, the whole idea of Game of Thrones is that there are several kingdoms,
and 7 kings must die.
Yeah. So there's different thrones, there's different kingdoms, and that's where it's similar to The Last Kingdom. Now, watching the show, because we didn't go back and do a rewatch before this film came out, I was a little bit like, I couldn't remember what happened.
They left out a lot of people.
A lot of real life people?
No, people from the series that had survived, shall we say.
Well, okay, my point is, I couldn't remember, like, what happened in the end. You know what I mean? So definitely,
he got Bebenberg back.
Definitely, if you haven't seen the film yet, I think you should at least maybe go back and watch the last season.
Yeah, and of course, beforehand. This goes without saying, if you haven't seen the show, then this is spoiler laden.
Yeah, the show or the film.
Or the film, yeah.
Yeah.
But you need to probably have seen, if you haven't seen Last Kingdom, the series, then the movie's not really going to make too much sense.
I mean, I guess. It really depends on how much
because it's ending a story
about British history, maybe?
I suppose so, yeah.
Because, so...
Because it's set 6 years after the show ended.
So I vaguely remembered that the reason they did the film was they said there was one more story to tell? Or am I thinking of Peaky Blinders?
I think it goes for both shows, really.
I think it was Last Kingdom.
Yeah.
Lost Kingdom.
No, that's the next show, The Lost Kingdom.
Yeah. But yeah, I couldn't remember exactly where we had left off, so I think it is important you refresh your memory if you're anything like me, and watch the previous season before you watch the film, because it picks up 6 years later.
6 years later, people are gone.
Yeah.
Like Aylesworth, Alfred's wife. She was still alive, I think, at the end. But she's just kind of like, it's just presumed she's gone somewhere off screen or died or whatever. And there's a bunch of people that are missing, and you've just kind of got to presume, they're off doing their own thing.
She did. She went off with one of their kids or something, didn't they?
Yeah.
They kind of went off, and they were like, "Oh, you have to go into hiding or something."
Yeah, no, that was Osbert.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
I'm still confused. I need to go back and watch it
There's a lot of, like, Ethelstan and Ethelfled, and it's probably confusing for people who are not, like, up on... Ethel was everything.
The people who were missing, I didn't find that as, like, where are they? Because it seemed to me like a lot of people died. Again, similar to Game of Thrones, a lot of characters die over the course of the series. So I wasn't really like, oh, well, where is so-and-so? Where is so-and-so? For me, I was a little bit more confused as to who some of them were. Like the woman with the son, and they come and stay at Bebenberg. I still don't know who she was. I hate to...
that was what happens is, right, Uhtred had 3 children with his wife Gisela.
Okay, yeah.
And, you know...
One of them died, though, didn't it?
His eldest son, young Uhtred,
because
he was called Uhtred, son of Uhtred, go to a Catholic monastery to join his father and ultimately wind up castrated. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah, I'm reading this from Small Details You Missed in The Last Kingdom, 7 Kings Must Die. It's from looper.com. It's an article on looper.com. Stiora, do you remember his daughter, Stiora?
Okay, yeah.
Marries the Danish king Sigtrygge.
Okay, yeah.
Before starting her own Danish tribe upon his death.
We didn't see her, though, in this film, did we?
Yeah. But the youngest boy, Osbert, is gone, and you might even forget he ever existed.
Okay.
Yet at the end of the series, when Hildy, do you remember Hildy?
No. Hildy. Oh, the nun.
The nun, yes.
Yes.
Returns to Uhtred's fold in his final push to retake his home.
Yeah.
We see her talking to a boy. She tells him she's going to take him to somebody who might know about his parentage.
Okay.
When the boy asks if the man might have met his father, she responds coyly something like that. Of course, that boy is Osbert, and the irony is that the son ignored throughout the series is front and centre in Seven Kings Must Die. Because he's going to inherit Bebbanburg from Uhtred.
Okay, yeah. So he was in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It's like in the drama of growing up alongside the peripatetic Uhtred and his life. It would make Osbert the kind of son who could actually take over his father's kingdom.
Yeah.
Plus he's all too eager to please a man who the other kids view with a weary admiration laced with some very real daddy issues, because they know him, they know Uhtred, and they're just like, oh...
Yeah.
He wasn't there for me, and I'm doing my own thing. And
yeah.
So Osbert's kind of like he was separated from him from a young age.
Mm.
And then, he's been returned to him, and he's...
But she wasn't there.
Hildy, yeah, Hildy wasn't in the film, no.
Yeah, I kind of had thought she had died, I don't know.
Ethelstan in this film was... Yeah, I mean, I'd vaguely remember Ethelstan from the series. And he was kind of like trying to be like Uhtred a little bit.
Yeah,
and
Ethelstan was
Edward's son.
And
Edward was the... Oh, yeah, you have to watch the series again, because there's just too much to kind of, like, talk about.
Yes. And the names are all very similar, which can make it confusing.
Yes.
And another thing, one of my probably only problems with the series is the way they didn't necessarily age people, particularly Uhtred.
In the series they didn't know, and in this one they just gave him a bit of greying hair, and they just kind of like they didn't try to age him completely.
Because by the end of this, he should have been probably
in his 70s.
Yeah,
he would have been,
which
in his
would
70s.
Have been absolutely ancient. At
no one
time.
lived back then. Especially no one lived to 70 back then. If you were a warrior, if you got to 40, you were lucky.
So it was a bit weird. I mean, they tried to say, oh yeah, he's an old man, like somebody knocked him over.
He's king of Northumbria, yeah.
But there was a bit of a battle. Someone knocked him over and took his sword, which never would have happened before. So that was a little bit of like trying to show his age. You know?
his sword got stolen by a kid.
But the makeup was like very minimal. Like, we still have to make him as attractive as possible.
We still have to make him look like Uhtred. Yeah, we don't want to too much aging on him.
But meanwhile, some of the other characters over the course of the season, like they changed actors. Like, too early sometimes, and all of a sudden, the person would be a lot older than they had been, a couple episodes previous, and I'm just like, what is going on? So that kind of is a little bit confusing. Other than that, it's a great show, I think.
Yeah, in Seven Kings Must Die, they brought back Aldhelm. Or Aldhelm.
Oh, I don't remember who that is.
He's the guy that was... with Ethelfled for a long time.
Okay, yeah.
His loyalty belongs firmly to England, shall we say. He was the most like Alfred that there could have been. He aided Ethelred until he could no longer abide the king's poor treatment of Ethelfled.
Yeah.
Do you remember Ethelred, the king? He was a right bastard.
Yeah.
It's like, and he was kind of like aiding
her husband.
Her husband, yeah. And then he started to see, wait a minute, Ethelfled is a better leader than him.
Because when we first met him, he was a little bit of like...
He was a bit...
yes,
yeah, he
scheming.
He was a little bit like the guy on Game of Thrones.
All through the show, and a lot of like stories like this, there's always... And as Dominic pointed out when we were watching it, it happens in real life, too, amongst these royal families.
Yeah.
There's always, like,
someone on the sidelines.
An advisor who's, like, scheming for themselves, basically.
Yeah.
And when we met him, we met
Aldhelm, yeah.
Yeah, when we met him, he was like that.
He was pretty much like that. He was scheming, and he was like, oh, yes, you're going to be.
But then he kind of fell in love with her, so it kind of.
He fell in love with Ethelfled because he was like, oh, wait a minute, she's a better choice for England.
Yeah.
So he disobeys his king to protect and save his queen, because I think he wanted to kill her, Ethelred. He was like, oh, yeah, let's just do her in. And
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
go on a boys' night out to Miami, you know.
Yeah. He was scheming, and he kind of, but he sort of fell in love with her and stopped scheming and became like a great loyal advisor and friend of Uhtred. And
throughout the series, he almost invariably does the right thing, including in Seven Kings Must Die when Aldhelm helps Uhtred and Athelstan, who at this point is deep under Ingilmunder's control. Ingilmunder was him at the beginning,
Yeah.
He was like this guy who was like working for himself, trying to like influence.
Yeah. And there's several characters like that in the series, yeah.
So he allows Aldhelm allows Uhtred to escape and regroup, and in the end, that decision saves Athelstan and the United Kingdom of England,
Yeah.
There's already, debates at the end of this movie that, whether, as Uhtred died.
Oh, yeah.
And people are like, oh, is he dead? Is he not dead? But I think it clearly showed he was dying,
He could see Valhalla.
He could see Valhalla, yeah. He was there, and he was just like, oh, Valhalla, and he's just looking back towards...
Brita was there drinking, and, they were all having
a
great
what was
time.
the other guys? He was this kind of Dane who was
Yeah.
always betraying them.
He was a frenemy.
Yeah, he was like a frenemy, yeah. But, I can't remember his name, but he was there too.
Yeah. Everybody who had died was there, so clearly that was Valhalla. But they end with
Haston, that's his name. Haston, yeah.
What did they say at the end of it? Like, oh, did Uhtred die or didn't he? It said it on the screen. Didn't they say something about that?
There was just what happened after this event. It's Athelstan ruled England for 15 years.
They didn't say it on the screen. His friend was narrating then.
It's did Uhtred die? We never know. We'll never know.
Yeah.
Do. Yeah, I guess it's setting up for maybe another story to
come. It was a bit weird but I thought just having him suddenly narrate, what was his name?
Finan, yeah.
Finan.
Yeah.
Just having him
Irish
narrate
friend,
tells you that Uhtred died.
Yeah,
because Uhtred was kind of narrating sometimes, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
So, I mean, just the fact that...
And he'd pledged Northumbria to Athelstan.
Yeah.
So making him the 7th king to die, because, there'd been 5 or 6 kings,
6, yeah.
6 kings had
6
died.
with Edward.
Yeah, with Edward, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Athelstan ruled the United England for 15 years, and then it just went on, and then before it was invaded by the Normans in 1066.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when everything changed, all new money was brought in, all that kind of stuff. The French influence, I guess you could call it. But yes, I mean, I don't know why people thought it was going to be, because he refused, and him refusing to be in the Chronicle as well, Uhtred.
Oh, yeah.
He did that with Alfred. He was like, oh, don't write about me. Because Alfred was like, oh no, we've got to put you in somewhere.
Yeah. And
I was like, nah. And I think he was like, oh, we'll write about you. And he's like, nah, just sing songs.
It's sort of as a way to, explain why he's not in history.
Yeah, he's not in history, and everybody else is, Alfred the Great, Athelstan, and all these kind of people, because he was born a Saxon but raised a Dane, and, And it's kind of that ending scene of him between Valhalla and wherever. It's where does he go when he dies, because he's not fully Danish.
Oh, yeah.
And the last shot of the Bebbanburg Castle, which became Bamberg Castle, because it showed present day, You were like, oh, cute.
Well, yeah, because it just sort of...
There's a car.
It was panning out, and then it just... it just happens. Like, you didn't even really notice it happened, that it evolved into modern day. I mean, I didn't anyway.
Well, I think it was modern day anyway. When they were panning out, they just kind of CGI'd him in the window.
Yeah.
And then it just panned out, and then it was just like, oh yeah, that's what it's always looked like that. You know, it's like it doesn't really...
I don't know. I think it's so interesting because, I mean, obviously I don't know, like, I'm learning about British history all the time, but that is Bamberg Castle. Like, that's not a castle I'd ever heard of. I mean, there's so many castles in Britain. So it was cool to me to find out that it's a real place and it's really there and it's still there, because now I can go there and go, oh, Utrecht.
Yes, yeah, they've got I looked on their homepage, you know, because I was like, oh, surely they'll have something, and, you know, almost all of it, you know, it's like, fulfill your destiny, you know?
Yes.
And it's like, step into the real Last Kingdom at Bamberg Castle. Exclusive film props and costume displays from the hit Netflix series. It started out on the BBC though, so
The Last Kingdom.
Yeah, and it's only from the third series on it became Netflix.
Yeah.
I guess because the BBC were kind of like, oh, we haven't got the money to do this anymore, or this is costing too much, so we'll have to cancel it.
Yeah,
but it had too much of a following, and Netflix were like, well, we'll pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm glad they did.
We were kind of late to the game watching it, really.
Yes, I mean, we only started watching it when it became a Netflix show, because I think we got a subscription to Netflix.
Yeah.
And we were looking for stuff to watch, and, you know, like Game of Thrones.
I think I think somebody on Instagram recommended it to us.
Oh, yeah, it might have been, actually, now that you come to mention it, yeah.
We were looking for stuff to watch one time, and somebody recommended
That's right.
Last Kingdom, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think, you know, if we do make it over to, that might be a stop we make, and we can do...
Yeah, do we know, is it like, is it just the exterior? Like, so many castles in Britain are just the exterior, the walls, basically.
I think that
there's no kind of insides. I
mean, it looks like there's an inside here.
I mean, obviously, like, if it's been around since, you know, medieval times or whatever, the odds are that it's just the exterior, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. It looks, you know, when you're looking on the webpage, it's like, oh, this is the perfect, like, field trip for a school. Yeah. And it's kind of the same thing I did as a school. We always would do field trips to castles and stuff, and we were always going, this is where so-and-so got her head cut off, and, you know...
And you were all bored by it.
We were all bored by it. Because that was what we were being taught in school anyway.
It's so funny to Americans. Like, I just cannot imagine being bored by, like, walking around a castle.
It's all so old now. Get me my Game Boy, you know? Because that was the 90s thing then, you know? It's like, oh, I just want to be on my Game Boy, you know, playing Tetris or...
God.
Super Mario. I don't know, was he on the Game Boy? Yeah, he must have been. But yeah, no, I just remember, like, taking trips to castles. I was like, okay, so, you know, blah, 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 telling the story and all that. All the kids are just like, yeah, I don't care. It's like, we see castles every day. I live next door to one, you know?
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, and we're learning all this in school. It's all like the history of, like, oh, Henry Tudor and the Stuarts and... Mary Queen of Scots and all this kind of stuff. It's just like...
I mean...
Because, you know, you're obviously not taught that stuff over here, you know, so...
Yeah, no.
Because it's too, like, you know, it's like, it's not your history, you know?
Yeah.
I suppose, you know? So, yeah, you know, it's just that kind of thing. It was just boring to me as a kid. But as I'm getting older, it's getting more interesting, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, history is awesome.
History is all.
Yeah, history is all. No, it's like, it's one of those things that you don't appreciate it when you're a kid, you know?
Yeah.
And then when you get older, you go, oh, I wish I'd appreciated, like, sitting in that class and being taught things for free, you know?
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
like,
yes. I mean, I remember I had a history teacher who would go on about the Spanish Armada coming to invade England.
Yeah.
Oh, and that was around the 15th century. Francis Drake.
Yeah.
And I remember the history teacher getting so into, like, telling the story, and everybody else was bored. But I was kind of, like, paying attention because I remember this, you know?
Yeah.
And he was like, Oh, and Francis Drake, he was just so cool, you know. He came, he was like, the Spanish are coming, the Spanish Armada's on its way. Oh, we need to. And he was just like, I think it was because of something about the tide or something like that. It's like, we can't sail yet.
Yeah.
So I'm going to finish my game of bowls.
Yeah.
It's just like, we've got time. Don't worry. They're not, we've got time to mount a defense against them. And I think he did manage to like beat, get them off, defeat them and all that, so he's just like, that's why he's Sir Francis Drake and his golden behind, You
asked me before whether I enjoyed the movie. I think that I did.
I don't know really. I mean, it was good. I liked it.
Yeah.
I think it was kind of condensed.
It was rushed.
It was a little bit rushed.
Yeah, I feel like why did they make it? I do feel a little bit like, why did they make it a movie? Like, why didn't we just do this in one more season and then be done? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they were just kind of like, oh, that's the thing with Netflix. It's like, okay, 5 seasons, we're wrapping this up, but we'll give you a movie, and you can if you want to wrap stuff up. And I think it wrapped stuff up well, but it was a little bit rushed.
It was a little bit rushed, yeah.
I think so, but it's just kind of like, that's...
I mean, I understand why they did it, because, in order to wrap the whole thing up, you did kind of need that story, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose so. I mean,
but also it could have been finished with the last season of the show, and then
a 6th season. It was 5 seasons, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, they could have just ended with the 5th season where he got Bebenberg back. Because although I did question the whole time, like, I think what is the Last Kingdom? What is it? Is it Bebenberg?
The Last Kingdom was Northumbria. Yeah.
Yeah, I did kind of question that throughout the series. Like.
And he pledged it to Athelstan, so therefore it's become a united England now,
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they were ruling kind of like with Danes and Saxons, they were ruling in peace.
Yeah.
And, the Scots were kind of like, oh yeah, we've got a truce here, we're not going to screw things up. Wales had become kind of like, it's like it is now, Wales had become kind of like a subject to England.
Yeah.
As it was years later on, when the Welsh revolted. Mm-hmm. We're like, no, we were our own country. It was like Edward the Confessor, I think it was, Edward the 7th, maybe. I mean, he built so many castles in Wales to display his power, and oh yeah, if you, and that's why there's more castles in Wales.
Yeah.
Even with ruins and stuff, than there is across the United Kingdom, because, England and Scotland, they were just kind of like, relatively like, okay, that's it. But in Wales, it was kind of like, we're going to be building one in every town in Wales, so
Yeah. Yes.
You don't freaking start.
You're not powerful. We
yes,
are.
And we will have you.
Yeah.
So it was like all these garrisons. So that's why there was one in Swansea. There's one in Kidwaley. There's one in Cardiff.
Why didn't they do that in Scotland? Why didn't he do it?
Because they never really invaded Scotland.
Yeah.
They just became a union. They just kind of like, they sent English people, started going up there to live and spending their money. So in the lowlands started becoming anglicised, if you want to say it. And, the Highlands were kind of like, no, we're Scottish. We wear the kilts, we live the Highland life.
Because one of the kingdoms in this 7 Kings Must Die was Scotland, wasn't it?
No, this Kingdom of Scotia, yes. And his thing died. His heir died or something. His son died, so... Because
it wasn't the actual kings that died, it was their sons, right?
Yes.
They sent their sons into battle.
Yeah, so when those kings die, they have no heir.
Yeah.
And Athelstan, I mean, he was the king, but he was still considered a bastard by some people. His brother, for instance.
Yeah, why was he a bastard? See, these are the things watching the film, I was like, okay, I can't remember.
Edward,
he had a mistress?
He had a mistress.
Oh, could his wife not get pregnant?
Something, yeah. I think she was all into religion, and he was bored by her.
Yeah. So he kept sleeping with other women?
Sleeping with, yeah, I think one other woman, it was, yeah. But yeah, I mean, he favoured that son more. And he was kind of like, oh, I want him to be king, but we can't do that for legal reasons.
Yeah. Because
he had another kid with the boring woman he thought was boring.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I have to, he's going to be the one now, because, we're married and all that, you know. Yeah.
But Ethelstan did become king.
Yeah, because he killed his brother.
Okay.
Well, he was king anyway, because Edward was dying. Mm-hmm. We never saw him in this film.
Yeah.
And he died, and I can't remember the brother's name. But Uhtred tried to keep them like, oh yeah, just make peace, and oh yeah, and everything will be fine. Mm-hmm. But Ethelstan just went and stabbed him. I was like, yes, I am the king.
Yeah. But then there was the other brother that was being kept at Bebbanburg with his mother, right? The mother was protected. No, I'm confused now. Because I know there was Osbert, and then there was someone else who was... Osbert is Uhtred's kid.
Yes.
But the woman who came up at the very beginning of the film was Edward's wife? I don't know who she was. That's what...
Yeah, I don't know who she was. She wasn't Edward's wife.
And she was like, he's the rightful heir. We have to hide him or whatever. We have to protect him.
Yes, he's the rightful heir to Ethelstan, I guess. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure, because they kind of like made peace.
I think the thing on the screen at the end of the film said he became king after
Ethelstan, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what Uhtred said. Well, you don't have any heirs, and then your brother becomes king when you die.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he was like younger or whatever, I guess. Someone explain it to us.
Osbert was Uhtred's kid, and he's going to inherit the lordship of Northumbria.
Yeah. But I'm talking about the other guy.
Yeah. I can't remember his name now.
Yeah, we don't know.
He was
We're just making a podcast about this. We don't really know what we're talking about.
Anything, because we weren't there. I'm still in favour of doing a Last Kingdom type series with the Vanderpump Rules cast. That would be the best thing ever.
No, they should. No, they should make this with like commentary that is like explains who everybody is as they're going along, because there's so many characters. And
that's called a documentary.
I remember I had a problem with Game of Thrones kind of in the beginning too, because there are just so many characters.
There's so many characters who are like, it's very much an ensemble cast, and it's like, it's funny when they were talking about Game of Thrones, they were like, oh, this set of characters films there, and our set of characters films here, and it's like, we're all part of the same show, but sometimes we never film together, because, we're not in the same scene, so it's kind of like it's a different show we're working on,
Yeah.
But it's like, that's how they're doing these shows now. It's like, oh, yeah,
But the other problem with this show...
It's keeping up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the names.
Ethelred,
Ethelfled, Ethelstan, Ethelwitch, Ethelwatch,
Yes.
Yes, I mean, they're old.
So if anybody who can explain to us who the woman at the beginning...
Who's that
with
woman?
The son who brought her son to Bebbanburg. I'm sure she said she was the king's wife. So... I think she must have been...
yeah, she was. Yeah, she must have been the king's wife.
But she looked as old as Uhtred, and Uhtred should have been much older than Edward.
And they were talking about, oh yeah, you shouldn't be seen with Uhtred, because anyone who's seen with Uhtred becomes a target for his enemies.
Yeah.
So don't get too cozy with him, because you'll get targeted by them,
Yeah, and she was just like, I'm not going to get with Uhtred.
No, I don't want to get with Uhtred, because I'm a widow.
I'm a king. No, she was like, I'm the wife of a king. I'm not going to get with a lord or whatever.
Well, she couldn't.
Yeah.
That's what, it's because it's like it's a step down at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You've always got to think about that, you see?
You always do.
It's the rank of things. Do. It's like, oh, I'm the widow of... So I cannot marry beneath my station.
Yeah.
So even if you are a lord,
Oh. It was good. overall, it was good. Yeah, it was good. It was in line with the show. It was just a little bit confusing if you haven't seen the show in a while, which we hadn't. So yeah.
I think we've talked all about it now.
Yeah, there's nothing else to say. Let us know any mistakes we made in saying anything that we said, because I'm sure
if you're a big Last Kingdom fan and you know the ins and outs,
you know all about
let us know.
If you've read the books, let us know if you've read the books and if we should read them, because I do enjoy stuff like that.
Yeah. I think it would be good to read them.
Yeah.
It's, it's a mostly true story at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, and usually books are better than, the movie or the show or whatever, so.
They might have faithfully adapted the books, though. I think they start to do that. I mean, because, I know people who we're going to adapt this book. But then writers are like, oh, but I want to do this and I want to do that, and, because I want to put my stamp on it.
Yeah,
TV writers, instead of just following the script, as it were, that has been laid out before,
Yeah.
Adapting it into a screenplay, but artistic license, they call it. I'm taking a lot of artistic, because they used to do that with, Jeeves and Wooster, and the Jeeves and Wooster show was very much not like the books. Yeah. James Bond is not very much like the books,
Yeah.
There's only a couple of films that are kind of pretty faithful adaptations of the book. But the rest is just oh no, we need it to be something the kids will enjoy.
Like a comic book
version.
Like
a comic book
version,
books. Yeah. Simplified, know, yeah. So,
Anyway. Thank you guys so much, as always, for tuning in. We really appreciate your support. Shout out to our patrons for sticking with us. We appreciate you guys so much, as always. If you don't follow us on social media, be sure to check us out and give us a follow. We are at TButty, TEABUTTY on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, all the things, and we will talk to you next time.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
And remember, destiny is all.